The biggest difficulty with the ongoing gun control debate is the ambiguous terms. Rarely do I hear someone explain, on specific terms, exactly what regulations beyond existing law they want to impose. It's always just common sense reforms that any reasonable person would support.
There's common sense things that we can do.
That's what these reforms are designed to do. They're common sense measures.
Why can't we get common sense gun safety reform done?
But please, just take a moment and explain to me, what are these reforms and why are they common sense?
If you're a strong Second Amendment person, you need to slow down and take a look at reasonable things that can be done. Common sense gun laws make sense.
Of course, they're common sense because they make sense. That really clears it up. Thanks, Governor. With that ambiguity comes accusations of gun grabbing. If it's hard to understand exactly what laws you're proposing, there's a tendency to suspect you're actually just out to ban or confiscate firearms. It's an accusation that gun control advocates frequently and flatly deny.
We are not trying to take everybody's guns away, and the NRA wants people to think that. They're fearmongers.
And the March for Our Lives is not trying to take your guns. We're trying to take back our lives.
No one is questioning your right to have a gun. We're not talking about taking guns away from people. Nobody's taking away anybody's gun.
Well, maybe nobody until now, because now somebody actually is. That's somebody coming from within Pelosi's own House delegation. California Representative Eric Swalwell, the co-chair of the House Democratic Steering and Policy Committee, writing an op-ed in USA Today this week titled "Ban Assault Weapons, Buy Them Back, Go After Resistors." I assume Hogg and Caskey and the rest of the Democratic Party will soon be speaking in opposition to this plan because, after all, nobody's out to take your guns. But it's hard to tell since our author here is just another guy who believes in common sense gun reform. What happens when common sense gun reform and gun confiscation are actually the same thing? That's exactly what this article explains, and I promise you, it's even more insidious than the headline implies. Swalwell begins by describing a case he handled as an East Bay, California prosecutor in 2009, when an Oakland security guard was murdered by a man with an AK-47 style semi-automatic rifle. He says the victim never had a chance, just like the victims in Newtown, Orlando, Las Vegas, Parkland, or the recent Waffle House case in Nashville. Their doom was all but assured by the murderer's tool. It's weird to include the Waffle House case on that list because the victims in that case did have a chance. The shooting was stopped by a man who physically intervened. Also notice he excludes the Sutherland Springs, Texas church shooting, where inconveniently an armed man did have a chance against the attacker, gravely wounding him with his own rifle. And what about the 97% of gun homicides that aren't committed with rifles? Or the 98% of overall murders that aren't committed with rifles? Did those victims have a chance? It's just they should have fought back harder? Just not with a rifle, of course, because there's no legitimate purpose for those. We gotta finally act to remove those weapons of war from our streets, once and for all. And just what is a weapon of war? Well, according to our author, that was defined by the previous federal assault weapons ban that expired in 2004. That law banned certain semi-automatic rifles and pistols and shotguns with certain accessory attachments like pistol grips and folding stocks, cosmetic features that have no effect on the lethality of the weapon. The rifle on the left was totally legal under the law. The one on the right was a banned assault weapon. They both shoot the same round at the same rate, 1 round per trigger squeeze. And here's another inconvenient fact to consider. Here's the national murder rate during the federal assault weapons ban. It was in effect for 10 years and expired in 2004. And here's the murder rate today. Ever since we flooded the streets with these weapons of war again, our murder rate has actually declined. But not good enough, says this congressman. That law didn't go far enough. Not only do we need to ban the sale of these weapons, we need to deal with those weapons already possessed, because otherwise we'll have millions of assault weapons in our communities for decades to come. So what we need to do is buy back such weapons from all who choose to abide by the law and criminally prosecute any who choose to defy it by keeping their weapons. Wow, sounds like quite the task. And it sounds expensive too. How are you going to pay for all those guns you'll need to take everyone else's guns? With only a modest tax, of course. We only need between $3 and $15 billion to buy back all the guns at prices ranging from $200 to $1,000 each. Okay, so let me get this straight. You're going to violate the Second Amendment to meaninglessness, and you're going to confiscate my legally owned property without due process of law, and you're going to finance it by taking more of my money. Even one step toward implementing this plan, and I will spontaneously transform into Rambo Ron Paul.
Freedom is a young idea. It's only been tested for a couple hundred years, and we had a taste of it, and we're throwing it away.
Or maybe Ronbo Paul, I don't know. But even beyond the grotesque violation of fundamental rights, even beyond the toilet paper treatment of the Constitution, consider this plan in purely practical terms. We don't know how many Americans own assault weapons as defined by the former federal law, but it's safe to assume the number is in the multi-millions. According to the Congressional Research Service, there were 1.5 million so-called assault weapons owned before the '94 ban. Given gun sales data show more manufacturing and more sales, we know the number today is a lot higher. How many people are really going to surrender those weapons willingly? And how many of those weapons will be left over afterward? How many instant criminals are you going to make out of people whose only crime is wanting to protect their families? And what happens when you have a prison population that's larger than your tax base? Who pays for the imprisonment of the otherwise law-abiding majority, good people who simply want to defend their communities? You, Eric Swalwell, push the exact type of tyranny from which the Second Amendment was authored to protect. So do I think this proposal has any chance in Congress? For now, at least, zero. And I don't think the current president would sign such a bill even if it passed. But no longer will I listen to people saying, stop being ridiculous, nobody's trying to take your guns. Nobody except the guy second in line to Pelosi in shaping Democratic Party policy platforms in the House. So tell me, who's crazy? Is it the guy within your ranks who actually wants to take the guns? Or is it the people who've been saying that was actually your intent this entire time? I look forward to hearing. Thanks as always for listening and for supporting this channel always. Appreciate that thoughtful discussion down below and especially over on Twitter, that is at ML Christiansen. You're always welcome to coming out and chat in my live streams. Those are linked down in the description. Looking forward to it. Okay, bye.